On Friedrich Nietzsche, an introduction. To live alone, one must be an animal or a god, says Aristotle. There is yet a third case. One must be both, a philosopher. The purpose of this introduction is to provide students with a practical framework for understanding the main ideas of 19th century German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. Specifically, we will look at Nietzsche's concepts of the herd, higher person, death of God, nihilism, the last man, the Übermensch, amor fati, and eternal recurrence. Early life. Friedrich Nietzsche was born near Leipzig, Germany on October 15, 1844. His father Ludwig was a Lutheran pastor, while his mother had previously worked as a teacher. The couple had 3 children, of which Friedrich was the eldest. His father died from a degenerative brain disease when Friedrich was only 5 years old. His youngest sibling, his brother Ludwig, died 6 months later at only 2 years old. The herd and the higher person. First and foremost, Nietzsche believed philosophy needed to be useful. Therefore, he despised most philosophy, especially as it was taught in schools, which he saw as theoretical and useless. The only method of criticizing a philosophy that proves anything at all, namely to see whether one can live by it, has never been taught at the universities. Only the criticism of words and again words is taught there. Instead, Nietzsche believed philosophy should show mankind how to live. It should be a tool that enables a person to overcome their weaknesses and become a powerful individual. Specifically, an individual who affirms life even in the face of tragedy. When a person uses philosophy in this way, they become what Nietzsche called the higher person, a person who imposes order on their inner chaos to overcome their weaker nature to attain greatness. As Nietzsche writes in The Will to Power, to become master of the chaos which is in one is the great ambition here. However, when a person fails to overcome their suffering, they obey their herd instinct and take comfort in conforming to society, which is to say they settle for mediocrity. This includes adopting a conventional life, especially society's morals, that is, herd morality. This form of morality is uncritical. The herd follows without knowing why, and oftentimes hypocritical. Herd morality demands a type of mass psychosis in which its weaknesses, for example, conformity, dependency, victimhood, harmlessness, are redefined as strengths, and social pressure is applied to force the masses into being weak and obedient like them. Frail and insecure, the herd conceals their weakness by reframing higher person characteristics, such as independence and individuality, as toxic and dangerous, and therefore evil. High and independent spirituality, the will to stand alone, even a powerful intellect, are experienced as dangers. Everything that elevates an individual above the herd and intimidates the neighbor is henceforth called evil. Regarding the herd's attempt to reframe themselves as virtuous because they're harmless, Nietzsche wrote, "I have often laughed at the weaklings who thought themselves good because they had no claws." To rise above this mass psychosis, the higher person must separate themselves from the herd by confronting life's most profound questions, which the herd is too afraid or oblivious to engage. For now, he will have to descend into the depths of existence with a string of curious questions on his lips. Why do I live? What lesson have I learned from life? How do I become what I am, and why do I suffer from being what I am? On the death of God. In his early work, The Gay Science, Nietzsche famously proclaimed, "God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him." Since the Enlightenment period, a growing crisis in religious faith swept across Europe, brought on by an increase in scientific knowledge. Although the idea doesn't originate with Nietzsche, he is most famous for proclaiming this death of God. His statement was perhaps especially powerful because of certain discoveries that rocked the religious establishments of his day. For example, the discovery of the first Neanderthal fossils in 1856 and Darwin's Origin of Species in 1859. However, Nietzsche didn't celebrate the death of God. He understood that without religion, most people would lose their meaning orientation, leading to a seemingly insurmountable psychological enemy, nihilism. On nihilism and the last man. Nihilism is the idea that everything lacks meaning. It's the crippling consequence of losing one's meaning orientation. Nihilism appears at that point not that the displeasure of existence has become greater than before, but because one has come to mistrust any meaning in suffering, indeed in existence. It now seems as if there is no meaning at all in existence, as if everything were in vain. Therefore, the death of God is the death of the human psyche and the rise of the last man. Nietzsche foresaw the devastating effect that nihilism would have on humanity. He predicted the imminent rise of the last man, the archetypal nihilist who was weak, passive, and unwilling to take risks, is security and comfort-seeking. Nietzsche argued that the emergence of this personality type would lead to the exact terrors the world experienced in the 20th century, including the world wars, fascism, and communism, all of which forced people to deny individualism and submit to the collective herd. However, Nietzsche was an optimist. He didn't believe nihilism was inevitable for everyone and offered a possible way to overcome the death of self that followed the death of God. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? On the Übermensch and Amor Fati. The Übermensch, or beyond human, also translated as Superman and Overman, is the archetypal opposite of the degenerate last man. Whereas the last man is weak, passive, a slave to comfort and security, and therefore unwilling to take risks, the Übermensch affirms life in all its dimensions and circumstances exactly as it is. The Übermensch is a powerful individual, willing to assume risk, confront suffering, and stands confidently beyond the judgments of society's herd, who will always despise the Übermensch because he or she contrasts their weakness. The Übermensch doesn't think in terms of good and evil the way the herd does, but rather in terms of whether an action is life-affirming or life-denying. Whatever is life-affirming is good. Whatever denies life is evil. In fact, the first and most significant step towards becoming the Übermensch is what Nietzsche called amor fati, to love one's fate. It's the unconditional affirmation of life exactly as it is, despite its seeming tragedy and ugliness and all its suffering, and choosing to see the beauty in it all. My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, but love it. When one adopts amor fati, they see suffering as an opportunity to become stronger because it is out of the deepest depth that the highest must come to its height. And as Nietzsche famously said, what does not kill me makes me stronger. Becoming the Übermensch requires incredible sacrifice. To become great, a person must be willing to turn their back on everything and everyone who pressures them to remain in the herd. As Nietzsche wrote, one must be a sea to receive a polluted stream without becoming impure. Therefore, the man of knowledge must be able not only to love his enemies, but also to hate his friends. The eternal recurrence. Nietzsche offers a final psychological self-test for ourselves to determine if we have lived well. The eternal recurrence. Would you be pleased if you were forced to relive your life on an eternal loop exactly as you have for all of eternity? Or would that be your personal hell? In other words, would you say yes to the life you have chosen? What if some day or night a demon were to sneak into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, this life, as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and forever again, and there will be nothing new in it, but every pain and every joy and every thought and sigh and everything unutterably small and great in your life will have to relive, all in the same succession and sequence. Would you throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who said this? Or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, you are God, and never have I heard anything more divine. To be the Übermensch is to be able to affirm your life and say at the end, was that life? I want to say to death, well then, once more. Thank you all for watching. It's much appreciated. Be well.